Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Bulgaria faces another pivotal election, with exit polls suggesting a strong result for the party of former President Rumen Radev, raising questions over future coalition choices and the country's geopolitical direction. Joining us is Maria Simeonova. She's head of Sofia Office, European Council on Foreign Relations. Maria, welcome back to TVP World. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure as always. So, Mr. Radev seems to be comfortably in the lead. One thing that struck, I think, most people was that for how short a period his party had been in existence. Only a couple of months. How did he do this? It seems magical almost.
His party was recently created, but let's not forget that he's been president since 2017. So throughout these years, he had the platform of the presidency to speak up to the Bulgarian people. And not just that. In 2020, many crises happened in Bulgaria, in Europe overall. COVID-19, then the war in Ukraine, the high energy prices, and Bulgaria ended up in a political crisis, in a crisis of the political parties in 2021, which gave the president more power because he was the one appointing caretaker governments when, after elections, the political parties were unable to form a regular government. So those crises that hit Europe and Bulgaria, in combination with the crisis of the political parties in Bulgaria, contributed to raising the profile of the president, in addition to the traditionally high rating of the president in Bulgaria, who has rather representative powers, but he's not the one who takes the tough decisions. The tough decisions rest on the prime minister and the cabinet of ministers.
Right, okay, so thank you for explaining his profile, but it's what people associate with that profile that made them vote for him. What is it that they see in him that they did not see and have not seen in previous coalitions?
I think there is a big disillusionment with the political parties who in the past 5 years were unable to offer solid, sustainable ruling coalitions on one hand. Then on the other hand, it's, as I said, the presidency gives a platform to spread sometimes populist statements because, as I said, the president is not the one that has to follow up on them and take the difficult decisions that will, in practice, impact the life of the citizens. So I think it's the disillusionment with the political parties. And also in December 2025, we witnessed the biggest protests since the 90s in Bulgaria, which were triggered by the state budget, the way it was negotiated and what it included in terms of higher taxes, social insurance, and so on and so forth. But it was mainly against the model of the oligarchy ruling the country. So I think all these factors contributed to the expected win of the new political project of the former president. But overall, it's the protest vote from December, and it's a clear no to how the country was ruled until now, namely by using political power for private interests.
Understood. So basically it was a vote against the previous, as you described them, oligarchs, rather than a vote for this particular former president. Is that a fair assessment?
Also for him, because as I said, the president enjoys high rating, high popularity. But it's one thing to be a president and to have the high platform from which to say the things that people usually want to hear. and not deliver on them. But it's another thing to be a leader of the biggest political party and potentially a prime minister and having to deal with high prices. Bulgaria joined the Eurozone on 1st of January, which impacts to a certain extent the prices in the country. But then in addition to what's going on in the Middle East, the prices are additionally skyrocketing. So there are very difficult decisions that he will have to take from now on. But what is being talked about is his geopolitical stance.
Right. Okay. So let's wait and see how he does on that score. Now, in terms of his government, he doesn't have enough to rule, or the party doesn't have enough to rule alone. What's his coalition likely to look like?
First of all, we still don't know. What we are seeing right now are the exit polls. He's leading. The difference between the first and the second, between the former president and the second party, GERB, of former Prime Minister Boyko Borisov, is much bigger than expected. And still, the votes from abroad are to come, which might also change the calculations. But my prediction is that surely he will try to form a government, and if he cannot do it alone, he will need the support of other parties. Some of them already said they will not support such government led by him, even though his agenda on fighting corruption overlaps with the agenda of the democratic pro-European reformist opposition. They clash on the geopolitical front because the former president has often used the language that can be defined as pro-Russian, and he's skeptical about the support for Ukraine. I think this will be kind of a division line because also in Bulgaria, the majority of the population is strongly pro-European.
Right. So who is his coalition partner likely to be then? And what are the views of that party?
We still don't know if the Bulgarian Socialist Party will pass the threshold of 4%. So that was the more natural potential ally. Right now, it's unclear. I really doubt that the nationalists, who suffered big defeat, by the way, they're a little over 5%, more or less. But as I said, this is still exit polls. We still don't know. But apparently, he took a lot from the far right and nationalist votes. He took a lot from Boyko Borisov's GERB. And I think the far right, it suffered defeat, but also it's anti-systemic, very anti-EU, very anti-NATO political party, which makes it a difficult coalition partner for the former president, because I think he will want to become a mainstream party and he will try to legitimize himself through the international community, through the European community, and through the European Union.
Well, you say that, Maria, but he, he was just asked while he, when he came out, from voting, what his attitude towards Russia was, and he was talking about mutual respect and conversation and understanding. There seems to be, fairly little evidence that Russia has shown any respect to Ukraine or to the EU or to NATO. What does that kind of wording or rhetoric suggest to you about his personal view on relationships with the relationship with Russia?
He is famous for saying that Crimea is Russian. He kept saying this during this campaign, even though he was slightly softer, if I can use that word, on EU, NATO, and Ukraine, because I think he was trying to reach out to more voters, to more supporters. Look, what does it mean to be pro-Russian, especially in Bulgaria? Bulgaria is a target of Russian propaganda, and the Russian propaganda flooded Bulgaria during this election campaign. First thing, Bulgaria is a country on the eastern flank. The threat from Russia, from the war against Ukraine, is real. Bulgaria needs to work on strengthening its defense and deterrence capabilities, because Russia is a threat for Europe, for the European continent. So by being skeptical about supporting Ukraine, be it financially, be it militarily, is actually supporting Russia and working for Russia. This is why he's framed as a pro-Russian president. I don't think he will, at least in the beginning, he will be very vocal and very anti-Ukraine and very pro-Russia, because Bulgaria, first, as I said, the majority of the population is pro-European, and second, Bulgaria needs EU funding. And Bulgaria needs to participate in the various EU mechanisms to modernize its army and strengthen its defense capabilities. So I don't think he will go openly against the EU and NATO, but he will talk about a balanced approach. He's already talking about this balanced and neutral and independent policy of Bulgaria. But in the current circumstances, Bulgaria cannot afford to not be at the core of the European decisions that are taken
Maria,
in support of Ukraine.
That may be so, but I mean, Hungary couldn't afford that either. However, Orban was a constant thorn in the European Union's side, with, by vetoing all sorts of decisions around Ukraine. Do you think a similar situation might arise with the potentially new Prime Minister of Bulgaria?
I think Orban could allow this because he captured the state. He captured the media. He captured the judiciary. He was controlling what was out there on the public space, on the public debate. And I think right now, Rumen Radev cannot afford this because it took a while for Orban to build his ideology, to be able to stood up so openly against the EU decisions. And as I said, I think Bulgaria right now is very dependent on the EU funds. It's very dependent on what's going to be in the next MFF. And therefore, I doubt he will be against the EU, at least in the beginning. As I said, to be able to do this the way Orban did it, one needs to really has control over the state, needs to capture it. And I think any attempt to do this in Bulgaria will lead to protests by the strongly pro-European population.
Understood. Maria Simeonova.
But definitely...
Thank you, as always. Sorry, go on, finish your sentence, but we really must go after that.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish that even though he will not be so open against your decisions in support of Ukraine, he will not pursue them boldly the way a country like Bulgaria is supposed to do it.
Understand. Well, we look forward to seeing you again with analysis as things become clearer. Maria, thank you once again, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away. Lots more coming up. Goodbye.